Hey, football fans, welcome back to another episode of Lions Latest, the show where we gather around and talk about the greatest team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. I'm your host, Bryan Hanes, and we have some interesting topics coming off of the bye week. Dan Campbell has some stuff to talk about, so let's get straight into the video. But beforehand, if you haven't subscribed right now, guys, we made it to 800 subscribers, and I thought it was going to take till the end of the week to do that. You guys knocked it out overnight. I seriously can't express how insane it is to wake up and see that. It makes my heart happy, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying the content. It makes it really easy to put it out every day when I know that I got some viewers who are sticking around and giving me their thoughts, all your comments, even the ones that are a little hateful. I always appreciate all of them because it shows at least you guys are paying attention to my takes, and I always take into consideration what you guys say. So thank you so much for 800. On the road to 900. Let's jump straight into this video. So Dan's thoughts. What has Dan Campbell been talking about? Coming off the weekend, he talked to the media, kind of talked about what he thinks has improved and what little tweaks needed to be done to really make sure we click on all phases of the game. He spoke on Monday to kick off Detroit's Week 9 preparations for the division matchup at Ford Fields against the Minnesota Vikings. And some of his main concerns were what was the biggest takeaway for the self-evaluation of his team over the bye week. Dan Campbell really believes that coming out of the bye week, his football team had really yet to play a complete 3 phases of the game. So either offense was good, defense was good, or special teams was good, but not all of them were good in the same game. He said there was a lot of little things offensively he could get to be better, and talked about tightening up the screws on just a couple of things. He said, quote, "I really believe we tighten a screw here and a belt, and all of a sudden the thing is like running like a well-oiled machine. Just a couple of things, that's all, easily correctable." And we saw what happened in week 2. He says easily correctable, right? That kind of sounds familiar to week 1 when we lost to the Packers, just little things on the O-line that they needed to get corrected. And we saw what happened week 2 once those things were corrected. All those little things gave us a really, really big, good performance. So given the fact we had an extra week to perfect those mistakes, it makes me excited to see how we're going to play against Minnesota. The Lions are converting on third down just 37.6% of the time, which ranks 21st in the NFL. And that's kind of off brand from where we were last year. On third and manageable, which Campbell describes as third and 4 to 6 yards, Detroit ranks 20th, converting 39.1% of the time, because whatever, we're the big fourth down team, but converting on third down is obviously a lot better. And it just doesn't seem like that's another thing we haven't been doing great at. And I think it kind of points to the O-line not being as good as it was last year, but there's also some other things going on. Dan Campbell said, quote, "We are not getting the plays we normally get because we have not converted like we should on third down. Third down is the most glaring thing right now. We have to be better." And I think that's another one of those things they've just worked on the past couple of weeks. Third down plays, third down conversions, which makes me really excited to see what we will do in those really tight situations against the Vikings. Players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs are thriving, though, while Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta, and David Montgomery really could be getting used a lot more. Despite this being addressed, it still seems like JMO is more of a distraction in plays rather than a main function of the offense like John Morton said he would be preseason, which is fine if we are winning, right? That's fine if he's stretching the field, giving more stuff to a guy like St. Brown. That's fine. But you know, and Laporta is just having an okay season. Big third down guy for sure, but when you take into consideration that stat we just heard about third down, it's not nearly as exciting as you think. We need to definitely incorporate him a lot more in the red zone. He was a threat his rookie year, obviously. Since then, we've gotten some more receivers, but we've seen what he can do in those scoring situations. Sam Laporta definitely needs to get the ball in his hands a lot more. All valid points brought up by Dan Campbell. I have faith in the coach. I have faith in the GM. I would have been a lot more worried if we didn't fix the stuff we were supposed to fix in week 1, but it was shown that even in 1 week, we could knock out a couple of things to make our offense 10 times better. So if we have a bye week and we're getting some guys back healthy, I have big expectations and big hopes for this team against a division rival coming up this week. Let me know what you guys think. What were your biggest concerns last week? What did you think need to be addressed? And what did you think we did particularly well last week? Or, well, not during the bye week, but you know what I mean. That'll take us into our second topic, which, we got some good things happening. We got some good things being corrected, but now we have some bad news for a guy a lot of people thought was were going to be back sooner than later. And the Lions have not been exactly certain when veteran defensive end Marcus Davenport will be returning to the team. Head coach Dan Campbell provided a hopeful update indicating the 29-year-old is still expected to return to action at some point this season, but just not necessarily sure when at this point. Davenport has been out since suffering a chest injury in week 2 against the Chicago Bears. I think it was a pectoral injury. And it was just kind of one of those things we were waiting for it to happen, but we were really hoping and praying it wasn't going to be as soon as week 2, because he definitely is a part of our defensive line, and having him back is going to be huge, though Al-Qadim Muhammad has been pretty great. Dan Campbell said, quote, "I have nothing new on Davenport. He's improving, but I can't give you anything definitive. This is when he's going to be back. I'm just very confident he is going to be back. We're going to get him back here. I can't tell you an exact date there yet." So at least we know he's at least going to be back this season. Maybe if he makes that return for like the end of the season, we can kind of get that surge we might need defensively. We saw what we needed Zadarius Smith last year and what that did for our defense. But there was more optimistic news on some other players. Sion Vaki, left tackle Taylor Decker. We got some good updates on them. Vaki has been battling a groin injury that's been kind of making it hard to get to practice, and has not been able to get out and do anything for the last month. Detroit's fifth-year head coach expressed that Vaki's expected to practice this week, with hopes of former fourth-round pick being available to suit up against the Minnesota Vikings. That would be absolutely great. A great special teamer, and God forbid something were to happen to a running back. He is super great, and he has been improving ever since he's been with us. Decker will not practice on Tuesday, but is expected to return to practice on Thursday. Dan Campbell said, quote, "I see him practicing tomorrow, not today. He did yesterday, but I just don't see him practicing today." So this sucks. And while it's good that, he's going to be back before like the day before the game, the shoulder problem is just seeming to be more and more of an issue every week. I would be more worried if he wasn't, a vet who knew his steps and knew what he was doing. So missing a few days isn't like insanely bad for him, but it's still not a good thing. Again, we talked about how Giovanni Manu has been getting developed. We talked about maybe looking for someone in the draft to address it, because every day now is starting to feel like, oh gosh, Taylor Decker could just fall apart at any point, and he's an integral part of our line as it stands. We can get a lot more things open up in the deep ball with him available, and that's also partially why Jamison Williams hasn't really been getting the action we expected. So hopefully he's okay. It's good to see that he's going to be returning sooner than later, but we definitely need to make sure that shoulder is getting good and will be good. That is going to take us into our third topic. Let me know what you guys think about that. I think this definitely will give us more to think about when it comes to shopping for a defensive end, now knowing he's out longer than we anticipated. Or we could just, put our faith in Al-Qadim Muhammad, because he has been pretty good for us so far, has been declining, but I expect him to get back on pace. Now we're talking about something that happened recently, and that was Baker Mayfield speaking out against the refs and how he thought it was an unfair game. Now listen, were there some calls I think that were missed? Absolutely. But it went both ways, and don't say it didn't for a second. It went both ways. Now, as a Lions fan, I hear, "Oh, the refs screwed us," and I think, join the club, right? But yeah, what does a player do afterwards, and how can they get their emotions out without getting themselves fined? Well, our 24-9 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a huge statement for us, especially because of where our defense was. But there were some players on the Buccaneers who had some things that went down during and after the game that they thought wasn't, fair, that was filled with controversy. And that was certainly the case with Baker Mayfield. He made his thoughts known after the game, and he was very specific. He said, quote, "A third down defensive holding call that wasn't called. And also I'm still pretty damn confused about the double review." He said a lot of the things in that game were just a little questionable. He added a lot of frustration at the end of that. I may be displaced onto John Hussey in the moment, but I work my off, and I put a lot into the game. So when things I don't seem are deemed fair, I'm going to let somebody know. End quote. So he just basically went out and said, "It didn't seem fair. I'm just speaking my mind." And he's at the part of the NFL, his NFL career too, where he probably knows better, but he's gonna say it because they were rolling and it was a pretty big loss for them. We all know the NFL doesn't take criticisms like that lightly. So I was thinking that there was going to be some kind of punishment thrown in, probably just a fine, nothing crazy. because I mean, who can forget when the NFL fined Kansas City, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes for criticizing the officials following the loss to the Bills game in 2023, right? According to the NFL's official website, Reid received a $100,000 fine for publicly criticizing the officials, while Mahomes' $50,000 fine was due to unsportsmanlike conduct for abusive, threatening, and insulting language to officials, plus publicly criticizing the referees. Now, I don't think that Baker Mayfield was on the level of Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid here. He wasn't getting in the face of anyone. He wasn't, cussing or doing anything crazy, but he was obviously upset, and he put um, his frustration towards the league. Every week during the regular NFL season, the league penalizes players for their actions in previous week's games. The NFL notes on their website that these actions are, quote, to protect players from unnecessary risk and preserve competitive balance and game integrity. The NFL and NFL Players Association have agreed on the set of game-related rules violations that may result in accountability measures, end quote. So Mayfield, while he certainly could have been fined for this, the NFL has made a decision to not fine him. So it's like, okay, whatever. Because a lot of the time you hear that someone gets fined for saying something, NFL soft, right? But one Lions player actually did get fined. And the report for Week 7, defensive end Tyrus Wheat, who got a couple of sacks this game, was given a $5,722 fine for unnecessary roughness and striking, kicking, tripping, and kneeing. Wheat tripped Tampa Bay Buccaneers Mayfield in the pocket while trying to make a pass. In the game, the refs didn't call it as a foul against the Detroit Lions. They instead gave Wheat the sack, but then later gave him a fine. I mean, whatever. If we got the sack in the game, I think we'd still pretty happy about that. I would be upset about the fine though. The bottom line here is, after reacting to this, and okay, this guy's not getting fined, but we are after the fact. It seems, should players be getting fined that much for expressing their opinions in the first place? On one hand, it's a professional setting, and saying like that, stuff like that really shouldn't be the case after a loss. But I get it. I lost my mind over the Dan Skipper Decker reporting eligible scandal in Dallas. And that was actually one of the few times I've seen the league take kind of accountability for it in some sort of way. But when you truly feel cheated, you can't help but let somebody know how you feel. It's a really tricky situation. And a lot of the times, if it happens to your team, you call the NFL soft. But if it happens to the guy you beat, you're just going to be like, oh, you can't say that. It's a tricky situation. And I think I'm not really sure, guys. This just seems like one of those things where if you know you shouldn't be doing it, don't do it. But at the same time, if you don't care, say whatever you want. And I think Baker Mayfield said what he wanted to, and all the power to him. Let me know what you guys think, though. This wasn't really a groundbreaking discussion, but we've never really talked about it, and I felt like it was worth bringing up. And our final topic, just some of your replies to my takes. Actually, in my last video, there was like 25 comments, and some were good, some were not so positive, but you guys definitely let me know what you thought about me and Terrion Arnold, and I appreciate all your comments, good or bad. We'll start off with Superman24 saying, Terrion Arnold is not going anywhere. If anything, we will trade him in his 4th year, and if we can't trade him, we will release him then. Until then, let him develop and hope for the best. I agree with you, though, about getting less playing time because Amik is playing so well. Remember, Darius Slay was awful in the first couple of years on a worse Lions team. As a matter of fact, he was benched a couple of times. So yeah, I said there was like one of those rumors of benching him. I don't think we're necessarily going to do it this year. I think we're going to get our, the most out of him we can. We've signed him to a contract. It's like, let's just see what we can get out of him. He's a 1st-round pick. He's got value there. And again, he's playing so bad at this time that even trading him, we wouldn't probably get anything from him. So I totally agree with what you're saying there. Darius Slay was a good example of what can happen. Let's hope for the best. Thank you so much for your comment, Superman24. Trey77 said, and I just took a snippet because this was a very long comment, but I wanted to talk about this part. They say, ever since we drafted Jeffrey Okudah with the 3rd overall pick, I haven't been a fan of drafting corners. I don't blame you. Other than cornerback is the hardest position to adjust from college to the NFL. I agree. I think Amik should start on the outside, with Reed possibly move TA to slot/nickel cornerback. With Kirby and Branch at safety, I think those are the starting 5. We're loaded at linebacker, especially with Rodriguez coming back, and we're going to have to release somebody from the starting 53. Yeah, so linebacker, we're chilling. I have no worries about the linebacker position, but I definitely think you have a good point in that first sentence. Drafting a cornerback can be so scary. I think that's a lot of times while teams will just trade for one who is developed already. You can see what kind of goes around with Jalen Ramsey. He gets traded around and he's been effective where he's gone, right? But like you say, the problem with drafting a guy like that first round is then the amount of development you put into him. And sometimes it doesn't always work out as quick as you want it to. I think that's kind of the situation we're seeing right now. But like Superman said, and like a lot of you guys said, let him develop. I don't think he's going anywhere as the times at right now. But I definitely think Amik the Freak should be getting more playing time, and I definitely think we're going to see a little more tilt towards him until Terrion Arnold can show he's playing a lot more disciplined. But that's just that. Thank you so much for your comment, Trey77. Finally, Scorpio Moon 18 says, as far as the trade goes, I'm liking the kid from Miami. I live down here in Atlanta, and ever since the Lions had a bye this past Sunday, I've decided to watch the locally televised Falcons game. They played against the Miami Dolphins and got crushed. True. Jalen Phillips didn't do much stat-wise, but man, was he a force to be reckoned with out there. The Atlanta Falcons were double and triple teaming him most of the time, and that freed up other Dolphin defenders to wreak havoc, similar to where opposing defenses attempt to do with our guy Hutch when he's rushing the passer. That kid's really good and cheap, and young. That would be my trade deadline target. Yeah, those three things you said right there. Cheap, young, and high upside. Like, that's a trade target we should be aiming at, especially now with the Dolphins kind of, I mean, their last game definitely showed more promise, but they're in a position where they're not necessarily making a push to the playoffs this season or aiming to be extremely good this season. So it's time now to start looking for those guys, to shop those guys. And like you said with the stats, oftentimes less tackles means the quarterback was targeting that receiver less, right? Because you don't want to throw to him if you know the guy on him is clamping him up. That's not always the case, but it could be. I feel like that was the case in that game. And again, high upside. I totally agree with what you're saying here, Scorpio Moon. Big Unk, appreciate the comment. With that being said, we are out of time today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Lions Latest. If you made it to this point of the video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss a single video. Thank you guys again, really, so much for the comments. It's been really hard to choose which ones to do at the end of this videos now, and it's more exciting to read what you guys have to say. So thank you so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.